Hello, I'm Peggy Hall, and I'm here to talk with you about the importance of starting off compliant. I'm referring to your legal compliance, which means knowing and following the laws that apply to making and selling your food product. These laws are in place to ensure that you're producing a safe food product and providing product information to your consumers. A failure to comply with applicable laws can result in agency enforcement actions, fines, an unsafe food product, and legal liability. So legal compliance is critical to the success of your business. But you can easily reduce your business risk by starting off compliant. So, where do you start and what do you need to know? Well, that depends on your answers to two initial questions. What food product do you want to produce, and where do you want to sell it? Your answers to these questions should direct you to the laws that apply to you, and they'll help you address the compliance questions you're probably already asking, such as, do I need a license to make or sell my food product? Can I produce or process my food product in my home? Or must I take it to a processor? Will there be an inspection of my food facility or a sampling of my food? And what does that involve? Are there labeling requirements for my food product? Where can I sell my food product? These are the compliance questions we'll address throughout this course. But first, we'll begin with an overview of the compliance landscape so you know which laws apply to you. Then you can learn the details of those laws in our later modules on specific types of foods. So let's start with a look at the compliance landscape. There are 4 regulatory agencies that oversee food production and sales in the United States and Ohio. They are the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, the United States Department of Agriculture, Ohio's Department of Agriculture, and the Ohio Department of Health and its local health departments. While the federal agencies oversee federal food safety at the federal level, most of your interaction will be with our state and local agencies. These agencies act under a combination of state and federal laws. The Ohio Department of Agriculture has 3 divisions that might apply to you: the Dairy Division, the Meat Inspection Division, and the Food Safety Division. These divisions enforce food safety, licensing, and labeling laws for different types of food products. The Dairy Division oversees the production and processing of dairy products, which includes milk, cheese, yogurt, sour cream, butter, and frozen dairy desserts such as ice cream, popsicles, and frozen ices. If you want to make and sell one of these products, you'll need a milk processor license or a milk producer license. The Meat Inspection Division handles the inspection and licensing of livestock and poultry processing facilities, our fully inspected and custom-exempt operators who can slaughter and process animals for retail resale or directly for customers who own the animal. If you want to sell meat from animals you raise, you'll need to understand what the Meat Inspection Division does, although some types of small meat and poultry processing activities fall under the next division, the Food Safety Division. This division plays a role in overseeing all other food products with just a few exceptions. Those who want to produce canned foods, beverages, syrups, honey, maple syrup, frozen non-dairy foods, eggs, baked goods, and home-produced cottage foods will need to understand what this division does. The Food Safety Division covers many different types of licenses, from those that address a specific type of food product, such as cannery, bottling, frozen food, and home bakery licenses, to those that address a type of food activity, such as warehousing, small egg production sales, and farm market registrations. The Food Safety Division also oversees food production activities that are exempt from licensing requirements, but are still subject to legal requirements, such as cottage foods and on-site egg and poultry sales. In our later modules, we address the specific license, registration, and labeling laws that these 3 divisions of the Ohio Department of Agriculture oversee for that particular type of food product that you may want to produce and sell. Even if you are subject to licensing, registration, or other laws enforced by the Ohio Department of Agriculture, you might also need to work with your local health department for certain types of food sales activities. The local health department oversees licensing of retail food sales that are made directly to consumers at venues like a farmer's market, festival, or farm market. It is common for a home-produced or farm-raised food business to need a retail food establishment, or RFE license, or a mobile retail food establishment license. You'll need to know if your food sales activity will require an RFE or mobile RFE license. Whether it does, once again, depends upon what you want to sell and where you want to sell it. We'll address the applicable RFE license requirements within each of our specific food type modules. Now that we've covered the regulatory landscape, let's look more closely at different types of foods that you might want to make and sell, and provide more guidance on identifying the laws that apply to you. For instance, if you want to sell baked goods, whether you need a license depends on whether the baked good is potentially hazardous and requires time and temperature controls to keep it safe for consumption. Cheesecake is an excellent example of a potentially hazardous food. It requires refrigeration. If you want to make and sell cheesecake, or other potentially hazardous baked goods, you'll need to get a home bakery license from the Ohio Department of Agriculture. But if the baked good you want to make is not potentially hazardous, it probably falls under Ohio's cottage food law. No license is required for making and selling a food that is on the cottage food list. The Ohio Department of Agriculture determines which foods are on the cottage food list. The list includes many baked goods such as cookies, breads, brownies, cakes, fruit pies, waffle cones, pizzelles, and unfilled donuts. Or are you thinking about making jams, jellies, and fruit butter, or fruit chutney? These foods are also on Ohio's cottage food list, so a license is not necessary. Note, though, that freezer jam and sugar-free varieties of jam, jelly, or fruit butter is not on the cottage food list. You must obtain a frozen food license to make and sell a freezer variety, or a cannery license to make sugar-free jam, jelly, or fruit butter. Ohio's cottage food law includes many other foods you can make and sell without a food license, such as many types of candy, snack foods like granola and popped corn, coffee and tea, dry mixes, dry herbs, and certain honey and maple products. If your food business includes any of these types of products, be sure to review our later module on cottage foods to understand how to comply with Ohio's cottage food law. But be careful not to confuse approved cottage foods with foods that aren't cottage foods. Canned goods like salsa, pickles, relishes, sauerkraut, and barbecue sauce are not cottage foods. If you want to make and sell these food products, you may need to have their pH level tested, attend a better process control school, and process them at a facility with a cannery license. We explain these requirements in our module on canned foods. But maybe you're thinking about selling farm-raised meats. Here too, the laws that apply to you depend upon what type of meat product you want to sell and where you want to sell it. For instance, you can sell whole, halves, or quarters of frozen beef, pork, lamb, goat directly to a consumer if the meat is processed and packaged by a processor who is licensed as custom exempt. But selling individual portions of those meats require you to have the meat processed by a processor with a fully inspected operator license. If you want to store frozen meats at your farm or home for later sale, you'll need to obtain a warehouse registration from the Ohio Department of Agriculture. And you'll also need a retail food establishment or mobile retail food establishment license from your county health department to sell those meats at a farmer's market or a similar retail venue. We address requirements for these types of meat products in the frozen meat module. The laws for poultry are different, however. If you raise your own poultry and want to sell it directly on your property, you can process and sell up to 1,000 birds without a license. Or you can obtain a custom exempt operator license from the Ohio Department of Agriculture and process and sell up to 20,000 of your own birds directly from your own property. Likewise, you can sell the eggs from up to 500 hens directly from your property. But if you want to sell the eggs off the property at a location like a farmer's market, you'll need a retail food establishment license from your county health department. If you have fewer than 500 hens and plan to sell the eggs directly to a restaurant, grocery, or institution, you'll need to register with the Food Safety Division as a small egg producer. We address all of these foods in the poultry and eggs module. And there are many other food products like honey, maple syrup, cider, juice, extracts, and bottled drinks, dairy products. These products have their own unique laws, also overseen by the Food Safety Division and the Dairy Division. We address each of these types of foods in the Other Foods module of this course. As you've hopefully learned by now, each food product has its own legal requirements, and the question, how do I comply, does not have a one-size-fits-all answer. I've given you an overview of the landscape, who regulates different foods and different activities, and what general laws apply to these different foods and types of food products, so that you'll know which specific module to go to for your food product. If you're unsure where your food product falls, it's a good idea to check with the Ohio Department of Agriculture and your local health department to confirm which laws apply to you. Licensing, food safety, labeling, sales, all of these are elements of the laws that apply to food production and sales. Your challenge is to know the laws, work with the regulatory agencies, and comply with all requirements. Remember, the purpose of these laws is to ensure food safety and consumer protection. So compliance will reduce both your risk of a violation and a food safety incident. Both can lead to legal liability and a threat to your food business. So be sure to learn more in our later modules about following the legal requirements for your food product so that you can start off compliant.